Hi, how are you? Hope you're well. I am here to put my name to the test. If you've never actually looked at my channel, my username is Sorcery of Books, which is inspired by Sorcery of Thorns. And then the actual name is Slow Reader. And the reason I put that in is because I am a slow reader. But the thing is, right, I'm the only reader in almost every circle that I'm in on my boyfriend's side of the family. His mom and his stepmom are both readers, and they both probably give me a run for my money with how many books they read and how quickly they read. And then I think one of his cousins are as well. And then on my side of the family, as far as I'm aware, nobody's really a reader. I know my mom reads occasionally, but it's more like 1 to 2 nonfiction books a year, which that's still reading. You're still a reader. If you read a book, you're a reader. You know, if you read 1 to half a book a year, you're still a reader. But just comparatively to the actual number of books that I read compared to other people in all of my circles, I would say I read the most, if that makes sense. I'm not number shaming right now. But the point is, I read the most. And so for a lot of people that know how much I read and they ask, oh, how many books did you read this year? And I tell them the number, I always get the response oh, you're such a fast reader. And I get kind of annoyed because I'm not. And then I'm like, oh no, I'm actually not a fast reader. I'm a very slow reader. And they're like, but you read 60, 70, 80, 90, last year 100 books in a year. So clearly you must be a fast reader. People struggle to understand that when I say I'm a slow reader, it's physically I read slowly. I just dedicate a lot of my free time to reading. I feel personally, try to read for at least an hour a day or so. More if I can, sometimes less. It really just depends on what I'm up to. But I spend a lot of time reading, which is why I finish so many books. I don't actually read quickly. But then I thought about it, and I don't actually know how many words I read. So I thought, why not test it? Let's see, on average, how many words do I read in an hour, and once and for all, see if I'm a slow reader, an average reader, or a quick reader. I know I'm not a quick reader, but we'll just throw that in there for the fun of it, And so how I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to read for 30 minutes straight, and then I'm going to take how many pages I read and times it by 2. And the reason I'm doing it that way is because it's much easier for me to find 30-minute increments that I can sit and read completely the whole time versus trying to read for an hour straight, if that makes sense. So I'm doing it that way because that's easier for me, and I do feel that it would still be accurate. And I'm testing different genres, which is why this is the genre edition. So the genres that I'm going to be testing, and these aren't necessarily in the order I'm going to be testing them in, but I'm going to be testing contemporary fantasy, so witchy rom-coms, paranormal rom-coms, any light-hearted fantasy book that is set in modern times and that you would find in the romance section and that reads more like a contemporary romance than an actual fantasy. I will be testing a fantasy book, so something like ACOTAR or One Dark Window, or essentially where the bulk of my reading comes from. I will be testing contemporary romance books. I will probably be doing this with either an Abby Jimenez book or Swift and Saddled, but just any adult romance book that I pick up next will be the book that I'm testing this with. I'll be doing mystery thrillers. So Riley Sager, Frida McFadden, Lucy Foley, Rachel Hawkins, any of those I will be reading and testing. I'll be doing YA fantasy. So same as the adult fantasy, but geared toward young adult readers rather than adult readers. And then this is not a genre, but a comfort author. So I will most likely be choosing either Sonia Odette, or I might reread Once Upon a Broken Heart and use that as the tester for this, or Carvel. Honestly, either of the two. So those are the genres, and for each genre, I will be calculating how many pages I read. And then at the end, once I've read every genre for an hour and know how many words, how many pages I read in that hour, I will average it out to know a general number. I don't know how I'm going to do the average yet. Maybe I'll do the median, maybe I'll do the average. I haven't decided. That will come later on. As I said, I'm doing 30-minute blocks and then timesing that number by 2. I'm not subtracting anything. I'm taking note of the page I start and the page I end on, and I physically count every single page that I read so that there's no like, oh, I read till page 55, so I'm gonna subtract from 56 page or this or that, so that it's physically counting every single page that I read. In addition to that, I'm going to try and exclusively stick to the physical book, not ebooks, because I know ebook pages are sometimes messed up. That being said, there is a possibility that for the mystery thriller and for the contemporary romance, I might do an ebook because I only have 2 physical TBR books in the romance category, and I have no physical books on my TBR for the mystery thriller category. So it is also just what is available to me at the time. If I'm really dedicated, I might just pick up a random book and start on a random page and just see how many pages I read with that. But that is how I'm going to decide if I'm either a slow, an average, or a quick reader, and we can finally put my namesake to rest. And then if anybody argues with me, I can send them to this video, which I won't, because nobody except my boyfriend knows that this is a hobby of mine. So yes, but that's what we're doing, so let's get to it. Hi, so I'm here to find out how many pages I can read in an hour for the contemporary fantasy genre. I'm doing this one first because I actually was already reading this book before I started this video and wanted to just get it done and dusted, considering I don't really read the genre too often and I don't want to wait a full year to finish this video. So the book that I am picking up is Witch Please by Anne Aguirre, and I'm on page 22. So I'm going to go ahead, set my timer, and then I will check back in, letting you know what page I stopped on and how many pages I read. So obviously I'm finished. So I started on page 22 as I mentioned, and then I read all the way up until page 44. For a visual, I read this many pages. And so I read 23 pages in 30 minutes, but obviously I'm checking to see how many pages I read in an hour, so times that by 2, 46. So when it comes to a contemporary fantasy book, which most of the time for me would be a witchy book, or possibly even like My Vampire Plus One or My Roommate's a Vampire, I can read approximately 46 pages in an hour. I'm gonna check back in once I start a new genre and we'll do this all over again. Who knows how many more times. Hi. It has been a stressful week. I've gotten some bad news recently and it is incredibly gloomy outside. It has been raining since I've woken up and when I say raining, I mean pouring. So I decided that today I'm just gonna be in pajama-like clothes, stay in bed, and read a book that I know will bring me joy. And so I'm here to see how many pages I read in an hour for my comfort author, which is Stephanie Garber. I am currently rereading the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy again. And I decided this would be the perfect book for comfort author to see how many pages I read. So let's just jump into it. I will be in bed. I am tired. I'm not functioning at even 80% today, so please just bear with me. Alright, so as you might have noticed, the timer started on 20 minutes instead of 30. And the reason for that is because I didn't press record for the first 10 minutes. So that was my bad. And that was actually the second time that clip that I'd filmed. I read an entire 30 minutes prior to that and realized that either it wasn't filming or it wasn't the right something, but point is I actually read for a full hour at this point. I did read the full 30 minutes. Unfortunately, the first 10 minutes just wasn't cool on camera, so I'm sorry about that in advance. But in 30 minutes, I read 26 pages, meaning in an hour, I will have read 52 pages of Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. So I started on page 229. Started right here on this page, 229. And I did actually reach part 3 whilst reading. However, I did not count either of these pages since I technically didn't read them and I didn't think that was fair. And then the really cool part is that the timer went off right as I read the lost word on page 257, which was kind of cool. I didn't think that would happen. I thought it would always end in the middle of the chapter. But yes, 52 pages, which is slightly more than with my contemporary fantasy book. Not that I'm fully surprised. This trilogy specifically, I can read very quickly. It's very easy to fall into. Looks like right now we're sticking to low 50s, mid 40s, somewhere around there. I guess we'll just have to continue to see. I still have a lot of categories to go, so I'm just gonna check back in. Hopefully in a much better mood and a much better face when I do. But yeah. Hi, so we are here with the next installment of this challenge, and today I will be reading a romance book. So unfortunately, I don't really have any romance books physically that I'm planning on picking up soon. And obviously I do want this to be wrapped up within a couple of months. I don't want to be doing this video for a year because that's just quite frankly a bit insane. So this book will be on my Kindle. Like I said, I'm going to try my absolute hardest to only read from physical books, but in this situation, if I didn't pick this book, I would have to wait months and months and months because there is no contemporary romance book that I'm planning on picking up for the next 5 months until a new release comes out, essentially. So I hope you understand. But that book will be Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood. It is a Christmas novella and it's 73 pages. So let's just get into it. And I'm back. I'm trying my hardest to make aesthetic little time lapses, so please let me know if it works or if you have any suggestions, because if there's one thing I don't know how to be, it's being aesthetic. I'm I'm a lost cause. But I did start on page 39, and then I read all the way up to page 62 in the 30 minutes, which was 24 pages. So therefore, in an hour's time with romance books, more or less, I would read 48 pages. And then so far, it's pretty much very consistent how much I've read. Obviously, it fluctuates a little bit, but so far it's definitely been in that range, which is good to know. Yeah, this is Ali Hazelwood, so I do tend to read her a bit quicker. She used to be a comfort author for me, so she's definitely on like the quicker paced side. I think where my slowness is going to show is probably the fantasy section, which I haven't gotten to yet. But so far, everything more or less, it's within the same 10 numbers, makes sense. So I'm happy to see that this challenge is at least working and figuring out my average pace. I will be back with the next book. Don't know what genre it's going to be. We'll just have to see. Hi, so I'm here to read another book. This genre will be for the young adult fantasy genre, and I will be reading Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I will be starting on page 227, and I'm going to make this guess right off the bat. I think I'm going to be quite slow with this one. I think this might be my slowest one, and the reason for that is because the margins are quite thin, and then the font is also tiny, so there are a lot of words on each page, and so it's just going to take me longer to get through. I can tell based on how long I've been reading this and how far I've gotten that it just is one of those books that takes me a while to read. So that is my guess, but I'm going to go read it, and then I'll check back in and let you know how much I read. You just saw me read for a full 30 minutes, and I finished on page 246, and I counted every single page that I read, which ended up being 20 pages on the dot. Therefore, for young adult fantasy, surprisingly enough, I only read about 40 pages in an hour, which is my lowest so far. I did guess that correctly, but like I said, I'm not really shocked because of how just small the font is and the margins are, so I'm not too surprised. And based off of some of the other books that I do have on my young adult fantasy shelf, I'm not necessarily shocked, because surprisingly enough, you'd think YA would have slightly bigger font, but not really. So I think that checks out. I honestly think adult fantasy would probably be more or less of the same, but it's still pretty on par. Everything has been in the 40s and one has been in the 50s so far, so it seems like I have a range, and I have 2 more genres that I need to test out before this experiment comes to a conclusion. However, everything checks out so far, so I will see you for whatever the next genre is going to be. I really don't know. Hi, so I'm back, and I'm back with the second final book for this challenge. After today, we'll only have one more genre left to try. So today we will be reading an adult fantasy book, just regular fantasy, not YA, not romantasy. For this book, I chose Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I'm starting on page... What page? I'm starting on page 62, which is chapter 5. And you know the drill by now. I'm going to read for 30 minutes, do the math, and I'll check back in with you. I started at page 62 and I read all the way till page 83, which is the first chapter page of chapter 7. That means I read 22 pages in 30 minutes, times that by 2 for an hour, 44 pages for a fantasy book. Everything's checking out so far. I am definitely seeing a pattern, and we only have one more genre left. And then we can do the final average and see if I'm actually a slow reader or not. Even though I think it's fair to say that I'm slow, but like if this is really slow and this is medium, I'm probably about in the middle of that. I think I will come back once we're at the final genre. I'm very excited to have this finished. I've been filming this video for Oktober tot November, December, January, February. I'm on month 4 and we're right at the end of the month, so it's gonna be about 5 months. Unless it takes me a while to pick up the next genre. So 4 to 6 months to film this video, which is ridiculous. Lost genre. Are we excited? I am. So, the last and final genre that I will be reading for this challenge is a mystery thriller. And as I mentioned in my last clip, I don't have any mystery thrillers on my radar that I really feel like reading, and I don't know when I'll be in the mood for one. And so I decided I'm just going to pick something up, read it for this challenge, and call it a day, because it really doesn't matter if I'm actually reading the book or not, because I will still be reading however many pages. And so for this challenge, I'm picking up The Lost to Vanish by Megan Miranda. I'm starting on chapter 1 and just reading until the timer is up. The reason I picked this one is because my boyfriend's stepmom, whenever she wants to donate books, she usually gives them to me, and then I pick whatever I want to read from them, and then I take those books to a secondhand bookstore usually and sell them there, the ones that I don't want. And this one was in that pile, and I've read one other Megan Miranda book and I didn't really like it that much, and so I thought maybe I'll give her another shot. So I decided to try this one rather than pick up a mystery thriller that I like. So we will see. But yes, I'm going to start at chapter 1 and just read. I believe chapter 1 starts on page 7. So we will see. Alright, so I have officially finished, and before I tell you how many pages, let me say this was the wrong book to pick up. I completely forgot that the other book I read I completely could not pay attention to, and I had to listen to it because her writing style doesn't capture me. And so that was kind of happening with this one. I don't think I retained anything that I read, and I kept zoning out, so I had to like keep focusing. So that kind of sucks. If I do choose to continue reading this, I'll probably do the audiobook. It's just such a shame because her covers are so intriguing to me every single time. But anyway, I started on page 7 and I ended on page 29, but there were a couple of blank pages in those pages, so I only ended up reading 22 pages, which is 44 pages for a full an hour, which is the exact same as my previous clip, which is very interesting. I'm quickly just gonna run through all of the numbers again, just in case you forgot, but it was 46, 52, 48, 40, 44, and 44. And so it seems like a good bet would be mid 40s is my average if you just look at the numbers and pick the number that shows up the most. However, I did do what I believe to be is the median, which is you add all the numbers up together and then divide it by the amount that there is. So I added all the numbers together and then divided it by 6 because I read 6 different genres, and I read approximately 45 pages an hour, which is pretty fair standard for the separate numbers that I wrote down. For the most part, that all completely checks out. And then for my research of what fast readers read, I did just go onto TikTok and I watched 6 different TikToks of fast readers making how many pages do I read in an hour. To make it fair, I did do the first 8, and I tried to pick numbers that were at least close together, but all of them said and like bracketed themselves as a fast reader. And so I did that to see if that's what a fast reader does, how far am I? So am I medium or slow? Because I know for a fact that I'm not fast. And so the first TikTok, she read 73 pages an hour. The second TikTok, she read 124 pages an hour. The third TikTok, she read 90 pages an hour. The fourth TikTok, she read 71 pages an hour. The fifth TikTok, she read 62 pages an hour. And then the final TikTok, she read 102 pages per hour. And these were all different people. I tried to sample it fairly rather than one specific person. So I took all those together, I added them up, and then I divided it by 6 as well so that it would be the same number as how many genres I read. And that would be approximately 87 pages per hour for a fast reader. And so a little bit of basic math, 45 plus 45 is 90. So I read basically half the amount that a fast reader reads in an hour. And so I do think it's fair to say that I'm a slow reader, which is okay. I knew that going into it. I kind of just wanted to solidify that fact, considering my name on both my TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube is slow reader. And like I said, I kept getting annoyed for a little while because some people in my life kept going, oh, you're such a quick reader, you're such a quick reader. And then I would tell them, no, I'm not a quick reader, I'm a slow reader. And they're like, oh, don't be coy, yes you are, you read so many books, of course you're a quick reader. And they don't understand that I dedicate at least an hour a day to physically reading a book, sometimes even 2 to 3 if I have time. And when it comes to listening to audiobooks, I do listen to them usually on a minimum of 1.75, but usually anywhere between 2 to 2.5 times speed. And so I get a lot of reading done through audiobooks, and I listen to audiobooks a lot. You know, every day I listen to at least 30 minutes of real-time audio. And when you listen to it in 2.5 times speed, I listen to about a third of a book a day. And so it's just, I wanted to do this for myself because I felt like I was getting gaslit almost. And so I wanted to do it for myself, and I feel good knowing and coming to terms and accepting the fact that I'm a slow reader, which is fine. I don't really think it's a big deal. I am very jealous of the people who can read over 100 pages an hour. I will forever be jealous of that, but it's fine. You know, I don't care necessarily. This was kind of fun. It took me forever, which that part I didn't enjoy, but I wanted to pick up books naturally. Aside from this one, I didn't want to just pick up random books. And for the most part, I also tried to pick up books about the halfway point, or once I'm kind of invested into it, so that I could get more of a clear idea of how much I would read. I think the only exceptions would be this one and then Witch Please. That one I know I started on like chapter 1 or 2. But other than that, yeah, I feel good. This was fun. And yeah, if you decide to time yourself to see how many pages you can read in an hour, I would love to know how many pages you read. Are there any fellow slow readers that watch my videos? Please say hi if you are. If you like me or my videos, I would really appreciate a like, comment, and subscribe if you feel like it. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye.